Good morning, everyone. Good morning. One of the things that I've loved about this conference so far is how we're looking beyond geopolitical borders to really nourish our energy and our ideas and our strategies. And so let's keep that going for a little while and hear about some perspectives from Haiti and Puerto Rico this morning, specifically on how we can learn from Haitian and Puerto Rican experiences in transforming disaster funding into long-term feminist funding. So my name is Adeline Azrack from Fondation CHANEL. I am also a sort of still recovering veteran of the international humanitarian industry, very happy to be where I am now in longer-term feminist work. I am joined by Carine Jocelyn of the Haitian Women's Collective and Verónica Colón Rosario from the Puerto Rico Women's Foundation. These are two of our newest women's funds. And I just invite all of you to love up on these two newest women's funds because they are going to do stuff. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to use disaster funding as an opportunity for longer term funding. But before we start on that line of questioning, I'd love to just ground us for a minute in Haiti and Puerto Rico. And I would love you, Carine and Veronica, to reflect a little bit on the interconnections between mainland US, Puerto Rico, and Haiti, and why thinking of us as a community is so important.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Hola a todos, a todas. Thank you for this. Thank you for letting us be part of this panel. My name is Verónica Colón Rosario, Fundación de Mujeres en Puerto Rico, the first and only fund in Puerto Rico dedicated exclusively to the issue of gender equity in the archipelago. So just to ground us a little bit, and Carine and I have had this conversation, and I've learned a lot from Haiti, and she's learned a lot from Puerto Rico, so this process has been beautiful. And it's really hard not to talk about how we're similar without putting the word colonization on the table, and how it has affected both places, and note how I'm not using just the word country, because one's a country and one is still a colony of the United States. And we have to say that out loud, and we have to keep repeating that the US still owns territories. So, and that has an effect. Haiti still had to repay for independence instead of receiving reparations. Puerto Rico is still dealing with the issue of colonization. We're in the middle of an economic crisis caused by very wealthy people who decided to buy bonds, who knew that will put us in the peril that we're now. And now it is the citizenship of Puerto Rico who have to pay that debt. It's not the government, it's not them. We have to repay them, and we're seeing schools close, we're losing public services, and they're even adding the cost into our electric bill. So that is a situation that we're facing now. And then also, and I'm just gonna say it out loud, and this is something that we have to keep talking about it, the poor value that Black and brown lives that the white supremacy give. In the case of Puerto Rico, our Puerto Rican women were used as an experiment for the birth control pill. Our Puerto Rican women were the first ones to try Oxycontin as first human trials. And we were also forcefully sterilized. So we have to think in both regions as, the thinking that these lives don't matter. So why I'm saying this is that both have gone through disasters, hazard, and economic woes that put the population in a very vulnerable position. So climate disasters are not just about a hurricane. A hurricane passing through the sea is not the same as a hurricane that goes through Haiti and Puerto Rico, because it just exacerbates the situation that both countries faces. In Haiti, more than 50% of the people live under the poverty line. In Puerto Rico, it's 39%. When you go to the center of the island, it's even more than 50%, and guess who is the majority of the people living under the poverty line? Is single mothers. Puerto Ricans' average salary is $20,000 a year. In the poorest states in the US, it's about $40,000. And that's a situation that we have to deal about. It's a very vulnerable population. Both have very serious political instability. It's a very different situation. Haiti, and Carine can talk more about this, but Haiti's going through a political crisis right now. I wouldn't go, I'm not afraid of saying that we also have a government that I wouldn't declassify as a criminal organization because corruption levels are very serious. And that puts us in a very difficult position because the perception of Puerto Ricans is that we're corrupt and we don't know how to manage money. And that influences on the next thing that I'm going to say is that funding doesn't get to us like it gets to everybody. Puerto Rico is not in a lot of foundations' portfolios. A lot of you know that. A lot of you have seen it. I've asked for money of foundations and they go like, well, I don't know if I should put you in Latin America or the US. And I'm like, mira. Can I define what a colonizer is to you? Mira, I'm gonna tell you, I'll define it for you. You want me to talk to your board? I'll talk to your board and I'll explain where you put us. And I think it's both. And it doesn't, a gender issue is across borders and it should be applied in every work that you do. In Haiti is because it's complicated. So I'm just gonna pass it to my colleague Carine to continue.
Thank you. Thanks, Veronica. Good morning, everyone. Bonjour, qui j'ennuie? Okay, nous là. So when I say bonjour, qui j'ennuie, that means how are you? You say nous là. Means we're here. We're good. It's that simple. So really, I'm just excited and just want to thank, obviously, the Women's Funding Network and Fondation CHANEL. Veronica and I have had some really great conversations in preparation for today and really thinking about the work in Haiti. The Haitian Women's Collective was formed to bring together and to highlight the work of Haitian women-led organizations throughout the country, who are often these smaller grassroots groups that do a lot of the hard grunt work, but don't really get the limelight, and they certainly don't get the funding. And oftentimes when they do get the funding, it's funding from larger NGO organizations that are, they're the small subcontractors, but they're the ones that are doing the bulk of the work. I think even in the time that I've been here since yesterday, what sits with me is that women are women everywhere, right? Women who are oppressed everywhere. Women in Puerto Rico are dealing with issues of, say, gender-based violence, just like women in Haiti are dealing with those issues. Just like women in the United States. I live in and work in Brooklyn, and Central Brooklyn has some of the worst socioeconomic indicators in this country, right? 4 out of 10 births are preventable, deaths, maternal deaths are preventable. We still have that problem, right, in the United States. For Black women, it is a crisis around maternal health. In Haiti, frankly, we have the worst indicators around maternal health and morbidity. And so, it's not that separate when we talk about, Puerto Rico and Haiti, how are they the same? How is the US the same? In fact, all women who are oppressed everywhere, it is the same. For Haiti, I think it's also always important to say that Haiti was the first Black republic, right? It is the first, thank you. It is the first successful slave revolt, and also helped other countries to get their freedom. So I remember years ago, there was a gentleman who was an anthropologist who's since passed. His name is Dr. Henry Frank, and I'm really big about remembering the elders. And he said to me, America will never forgive Haiti for their freedom. And I thought, oh my God, these Haitian people always got something, And if anyone read the New York Times article, remember that big expose on Haiti, I guess maybe a year or 2 years ago? The reality is Haiti continues to pay for and has paid financially, as Veronica has mentioned. And so for me, it really is important that we think about the intersectionality, obviously, around climate and disaster, right? But for women of color, for Black women, for poor women, for trans women, the issues are all the same, I would say, everywhere to some extent. Mm-hmm.
So maybe we can just outline a little bit about some of the advantages and disadvantages of disaster funding. I mean, disaster funding can bring in an influx of rapid money. It's probably the only time that funders work fast. and yet it is full of pitfalls. So how do you think about the advantages and disadvantages of disaster
Sure.
funding?
So I would say that one thing to remember about Haiti, and we've been through many disasters. It seems like it's an annual thing for us, right? 2010, one of the worst earthquakes around the world impacted Haiti. 2 years ago, the president of Haiti was assassinated, murdered in his home. Very closely to that, there was an earthquake that happened. And so for me and many of the women-led organizations in Haiti, right, it's this constant having to deal with crisis. Right now, we're in a political crisis the status of Haiti now it's never been this bad. That from my 88-year-old mom. And so I think when we talk about advantages and disadvantages for those that are funding or trying to help or come with good intentions or with good heart, it really is thinking about this is the opportunity to connect to those organizations and women leaders that you already know, right? That you already should have or working on a relationship with them. So the advantage is it's an opportunity to address it immediately. It is an emergency. Usually disasters are about saving lives right in the beginning. And so knowing the organizations, knowing the leaders, I think those are kind of the advantages. Some of the disadvantages, particularly that we've seen in Haiti, is this idea of you're going to come in and save people when you shouldn't be there. Like you're a part of now you're adding to the disaster. You're like showing up, don't really know anything about the country, the language, the people, the roads aren't good, right? But you come with great intentions, but in essence, it does add to a level, and it makes it a disadvantage, right? Because you're creating more of a problem many times. So I think the other advantage during the time of crisis is, we were talking about this earlier, is when things happen like this in Haiti, it highlights the fact that we have issues around electricity still, right? We still have issues around access to clean water. And so it's an opportunity, I think, for those who are really interested in helping, right, to think about what's the long-term plan also. Are we doing this 3 months? Define it and be real about it, right? We're here for 3 months. We're going to do whatever we're going to do, and then we're leaving. Or certainly if you have partner organizations, it's really helping them to plan and to be sustainable and allowing them to respond because they know what's best.
I think the advantage and disadvantage is the money. So it is great. And I'm going to tell you the example of the foundation. I started this job a little bit less than 2 years ago. And when I started the foundation, we had a beautiful $120,000 in our budget. And I was, in the middle of fundraising, and this hurricane came, and you're desperate. You're like, okay, so how am I going to help people? I only have this much money. But then people started calling me. The beautiful thing is that I don't have to call people and say, I need your help. People started calling me, how can I help you? And foundations that typically wouldn't fund my work open their portfolios and fund me. I received a donation from the Mellon Foundation, which is the largest donation that I've ever received in the life of the foundation. And it was a 2-hour conversation with this person. And I said, I told my board, she might give us like $100,000. They allocated $50 million to Puerto Rico for the hurricane. And I wasn't able to be at the funders briefing because I'm new, so I wasn't invited. But I sent someone to sneak in. Because that's what I do. I just sneak in places.
That's right.
And I just show your face and say Fundación de Mujeres en Puerto Rico. And say the issues on gender and climate, talk about this and talk about this. And she went to the meeting, and the Mellon Foundation person called me, and we had this conversation, and I told my board, maybe $100,000, $200,000. And it's like, oh, that's a lot of money. And then she called me, she's like, my board approved $1 million. And I was like, oh, is this a joke? Is this, So that's a good thing. The bad thing is that what we saw in Maria, we saw an influx of 80, and I'm only talking about foundations. Federal funding is very different. And I'm not going into that monster because that's a whole other topic. But we received more than $80 million from foundations, mostly the US, because guess what? We don't qualify for international funding because we're not a country. So we received $81 million, and 2 years after that, the influx of money of foundations was $31 million. And it's even less by 2022, and I haven't looked at the numbers for 2023, but that decrease creates instability in the nonprofit sector. And though we appreciate the money, and I welcome the money anytime, I just want to call into awareness of, if you're going to come into a disaster, know that recovery for places that are already vulnerable don't take 1 year. That doesn't take 1 year. That takes years. In our case, more than 5, more than 6, more than 7 years, and there's a lot of work that has to be done in that. And I think, the role of the women's funds in this situation, it's beautiful, and it's my first time in a feminist philanthropy organization, and I'm new in philanthropy as well, so, a lot of the time I'm just learning in the process, but I've been reading a lot, and I'm in this Aspen group of ladies. I see Stephanie, and they recommended me this book called Decolonizing Wealth, and I love anything that says decolonize. It's like, I want to decolonize my brain. I want to decolonize everything I own. And it really touched my soul. Edgar Villanueva talks about philanthropy in a way that we can heal. And that's what we need. And I think the power of women's funds is that a lot of us see us as a resource to heal communities with funding, and we don't have to fall into the capitalist trap. We don't have to replicate white supremacy, patriarchal behaviors. We can heal with the money, and we act fast. We know our communities. At least I know absolutely every grantee partner that we support, and that's the beauty of working with women funds during disaster, because it's actually the population that needs it the most during climate disasters.
Thank you. So in a minute, we're going to unpack how we collectively as a feminist community can kind of push the humanitarian industry to do better along the lines of what you were just saying. But I think before we get there, we need to unpack together one thing, which is the narratives that disaster funding creates and perpetuates. So just to kick it off, one example that I can think of as having actually worked in Haiti for a long time is this notion of, oh, they're so resilient. Oh, they're so resilient. They're going to be fine. And that's a narrative, a very fraught narrative. So maybe starting with you, Carine, like what are some of the narratives that you feel this sort of humanitarian funding can create and perpetuate, and how would we start to dismantle them?
Yeah, I think for me, and I've had not a long bit of experience working in Haiti, but I would say this idea of resilient is something we hear a lot about Haiti. I'm not really sure who it benefits to say that people are resilient, because they're tired. Like I'm tired. Are y'all tired? Some of you tired? And it's tiring to have to deal with this perception of resilience, right? Also, I think, and someone spoke to this yesterday on the panel around kind of privilege and power when we talk about responding to disasters, or kind of this humanitarian approach. We've had a lot of really awful examples in Haiti around issues of race, around issues of colorism, around issues of money, of language. There's a real issue around people in French who speak French versus people who speak, Creole. It's kind of like good English or New York English type of thing. But it really does set up barriers that don't help. So I have an example that was shared with me not too long ago, reminded to me not long ago, was about when the earthquake happened in 2010, and how there were all these kind of sectors created within the UN, and while they brought in folks that were Haitian, they brought in folks who really only spoke French or English. And so that meant that those that were most marginalized, most impacted, they didn't have a seat at the table. Those women were not allowed to be there, to speak, to participate. I know Madre is here also. Madre kind of brought that up in the sector meetings to say, no, this can't happen like this. These are not women who speak French, right? So things like that I think are really important. There was something else that was said also yesterday around money and access to money, right? And this idea around power and privilege and how we show up in spaces. Like even for myself being Haitian American, I speak pretty good French, and Creole and English. I'm real clear that when I show up in Haiti and or represent Haiti, of who I am in that space and who I allow to speak, and that the members of our collective, these 15 plus organizations, are there every day on the ground dealing with gangs, increased rape. Haiti doesn't have an elected body of governance at this time. So there's so many things that happen, and those narratives, I think, are hurtful and really don't allow us to progress in the way that we would want to.
Just echoing the words, yeah, I would advise everybody to be careful when they use the word resiliency. And we do want to build communities that are strong, that can take the next disaster. But for us, we have a lot of memes about this person with this, tire, and I'm like, yeah, I'm resilient. Like, I don't want to be resilient. I don't want to live in the conditions that I have to fight for survival every day. That's not where in the place I want to be. I want to be in a place that, if something happens, I have a structure that I can survive without having to fight. And of course we're strong. Of course we're fighters, because we've been in crisis since Colón decided that this is his land, and it's hurtful to keep hearing this word over and over again. And I remember after Hurricane Maria, and this is my white savior complex kicked in, and I decided to go to Puerto Rico with this nonprofit with a satellite phone, because I didn't hear from my family for 2 weeks, and I was going crazy. And I said that they're in danger, there's a flood, and I imagined everything, because the media here was scary. Was very scary about Puerto Rico. So I came home, and it was just for a few days, and I had my backpack, and I looked like a humanitarian aid, and I got home, and my mom came out, and I just had this mental picture of this very tiny Latina woman with a plantains in one hand and a machete in the other, and she's like, ¿Qué tú haces aquí? What are you doing here? I don't need you. I'm fine. I'm like, I love you too. It's nice to see you and that you're okay. And yes, we have a beautiful, beautiful community of people that plantain, ramo de plantain, the plantain stack, was left in front of her door by someone that she doesn't know who it was. It was probably an uncle or the neighbor. Oh, this fell, I'm gonna leave it to Toñita. She's gonna make tostones and she's gonna feed me 2 days later. And that's my mom. She feeds people in the community. And yes, we're strong. We just don't wanna be in this position. And I also think the urgency of the narrative, of the urgency of doing something now, to be in the media and say that you did something for a place of disaster, that's very dangerous, because you come and at the same time you go, and some foundations didn't even tell grantee partners they were leaving, and they were emailing us, I don't have money to pay salaries. And that is not okay. If you're gonna exit responsibly.
Thank you. I've been thinking a lot about that resilience narrative recently. I think we all should spend some time kind of meditating on it. Sometimes resilience can be just a sort of a sanitized word for coping. Sometimes we can use resilience, we, like the funder community or the government or whoever, can use resilience as a way of like othering people. They're gonna be fine, so therefore I can turn away. I can think about something else that's less personally challenging to think about. So I hope we can spend some time thinking about how we all disrupt that narrative through our work. So let's talk about how we can push back on the humanitarian industry. I think we heard some great examples yesterday from Latanya Mapfret of Global Fund for Women. You have some very practical examples about how you have worked with funders and worked with humanitarian organizations to kind of push back and say, no, these are the terms that we agree to. So.
Yeah, I'll go. I think that one of the challenges is if you don't already know, how do you say, the environment, and you have good intentions, because I'm still a believer that most people just have good heart, good soul, good intentions. They want to help during the time of crisis. It is best that you find people who know how to do the work already in country. It's usually not the best time to find new organizations, right? It's not a Google time. It's a better time to figure out who's already there, who knows how to do the work. And I think for foundations, maybe that fund in Haiti and Puerto Rico, it's like you all talk to each other. The other thing is during a disaster, you're not my priority, right? The people who are suffering, the funders, you're not a priority right now. People are trying to get electricity, water, their homes are messed up, their kids are in crisis. We don't know when school is opening. These are all of the kind of things that are so important. I also think, and most recently we've been thinking about this because of emergencies in Haiti. Do we have an emergency protocol in place? Is it the policy of your fund, of your organization to respond to an emergency? You don't have to respond just because. You don't have to respond just because it looks good. You want to save the world. Please don't put out the pictures of the crying children. I say pimping poverty. Excuse me if anyone's triggered by that. But that's the reality, right? That what happens. I have an example of the 2021 earthquake where we were on this kind of emergency call with other organizations. And a large or fairly large organization, very much entrenched in Haiti, talked about they needed to raise funds for tarps and tents, and I was livid. I was livid because you're in Haiti every year. Every year is hurricane season in the Caribbean. How could you not plan ahead? How could you not prep? But I think it's the opportunity to raise more funds. And while I understand that, it's, are we planning? Are we thinking? Are we trying to be sustainable to our approach in emergencies? It's okay not to respond to an emergency, right? But I think it's really important to have some policies and procedures in place of how you best do that. And one of the things we were saying before is sometimes even for some of my partners in thinking, they're busy trying to respond to this crisis in their own personal lives, right? And then they're seen as leaders or informal leaders, so people are going to them for resources to try to figure it out. So as best as you can, I like to say show up but don't show out, right? Check your ego at the door. I say that to people all the time. Whenever I'm going to Haiti or something, I go, as soon as you get to the airport, check your ego. You're not that important, right? And so I think that's important, and just really kind of stepping back and taking a look first. And it's okay if you don't respond immediately. Maybe you take the time 3 months later, 6 months later to respond. It's okay. It's better for you to act in a best way than to become part of the disaster or add on to the disaster. Mm-hmm.
I think, I've been reading a lot about the history of philanthropy on my free time. And, philanthropy has characterized itself, and it's still categorized like this in certain documents, as a charity, right? And I think we have to start thinking about shifting that mentality of charity in this humanitarian industry. And I'm going to give you one really good example. We have this grantee partner in Comerío. Comerío is in the center of the island. They have high levels of poverty rate, more than 50%. They have a very aging population, and whenever there is rain, not even a storm, whenever there is rain, the entire town floods, and they cannot exit. And they don't have access to medical care inside Comerío. So this organization called Casa Juana Colón. Juana Colón is a person from Puerto Rican history. She was a union activist, and she fought for people in the tobacco industry in Puerto Rico. She was the daughter of freed slaves. So this organization carries a heavy history on its back. And they have been feeding the community. And when we met them 2 years ago, they had $12,000 in their bank account, and they were running by volunteer work. And when we were talking about this, the philanthropic organizations in Puerto Rico were like, Puerto Ricans always working for free, so beautiful, volunteer. And I said, no.
Stay home.
That is work, and you have to pay for it. Stop diming, they'll do it for free. No. They cannot do this for free anymore. They're tired. And the executive director was a teacher during the day, and at night, this is the work that she did. This was 2 years ago. We gave them $35,000 for operational support to get their 501c3, and it was 16 years of work for free. And they got their 501c3. It took a lot of time, of course, 16 years of paperwork, you can imagine. And I am proud to say, we just had a conversation with a new funder. I connected them with a new funder because that's also what I do. I don't take all the money for me. If I see an opportunity to connect this organization with another funder, I do it. And with this, I told her, ask for the highest number. They're like, well, we give between 50 and 250. And I look at her, it's like 250. Like, do the 250. And if everything goes the way we think it's going to go, they're going to reach $1 million by the close of this year. And that is not charity, that is saving lives, that is economic mobility, because they're employing women in one of the poorest towns in Puerto Rico, and that's how I see our work. So I think we have to change behaviors. We have to start thinking about funding the difficult things, because that was a difficult work that we did. We have to start thinking about funding the difficult places, and we have to start seeing mitigation work differently. It's not about buying solar panels or masks or whatever. Yeah, that works. But also think about strengthening the organizations. This organization not only is going to have $1 million, they have a new space and they have a community kitchen, and they have an emergency fund from us. So for the next hurricane, they can buy food in advance, they can buy gasoline in advance, and they can feed the entire community. So that's the work that we had to do, and that is not charity.
Yeah.
So maybe from my side, I can offer one or two insights from the perspective of the funders. I used to work for the UN. I now work for a foundation that does a little bit of disaster funding under certain circumstances. Here's the thing. When there's a disaster and a funder wants to get involved, they're like desperate to get involved now.
Yes.
And there's usually money on the table. They want to get it out the door like right now so they can say, guess what, we did something. Mm-hmm. Now that gives you as the organization an unprecedented window to dictate the terms. Mm-hmm. Because they're ready to go fast, they're ready to go fast. The money is ready, they don't have to go and wrangle it or fundraise it or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I think that really creates an opportunity for you to say, thank you, we'd love to work with you, but no, we need it unrestricted. We can't do this. We don't have time for a report. Nope, we don't have time for a long proposal. Like, we just need the money and we'll catch up with you later. But you really have an opportunity. And then, here's the other thing. Once you do that with a funder, and you can come back to them once things have settled, once the acute phase of the emergency is over, guess what? You've already had an unrestricted grant with them. You've already dictated your terms. You've already said, no, this is the way we operate. You need to help us. Mm-hmm. And you can say, well, since we've already done it, let's continue to do it. Mm-hmm. Let's work on a longer-term grant. Mm-hmm. So I think that is, to me, one of the opportunities. I've seen it done. I've seen it done both at UNICEF and in foundations that I've been with. Mm-hmm. And it actually can push that funder to behave differently in the long term. Mm-hmm. So to me, that's one of the promises of sort of re-scripting how power works in disaster funding situations. Mm-hmm. So on that note, and we have just a few minutes left, Carine and mm-hmm. Verónica, do you have any sort of tips for other organizations here? Because guess what, no matter where you're working, you might be dealing with, it's likely you'll be dealing with disasters more and more frequently. So we all need to get prepared. What are your tips on how to show up with funders to make disaster funding work for you best?
You can go.
Okay. And I have to say something I didn't say before. We started in March 2020. So we've been dealing with disasters since day one. We've become kind of experts in funding during crisis, which is a good and bad thing. But the good thing that we learned is that our grantee partners are our best resource, and getting to know them at a deep level will help you be a better funder during crisis. We strategically have people in the center of Puerto Rico, in different places of the center, because it's really hard getting from one place to the other because of the mountains, in the West Coast, and Vieques and Culebra, because Vieques and Culebra are geographically disconnected from the main island. That's why I always say archipelago. We're not an island. We're a set of islands. And we know we have an estimate of people who they serve. We have an estimate we sort of know what they need. They keep us updated. We have a relationship like no other. I have done their workshops. I have planted tree with them. I have volunteered with their work just so I can get information of how they do their work. So I am very invested in their work. So being invested in the work that your grantee partners do will allow you to be a better funder during crisis. And it allows me to say, I have this amount of money. I know Comerío will need this percent, Mayagüez will need this percent, and Vieques and Culebra will need this percent to support this type of work. And I already know if it's heavy rains, it will affect more the women in agriculture. If it's heavy winds, it will affect more the people in the mountain. So that intelligence, you have to build intelligence to be able to respond intelligently during a crisis. And you really have to know who your key allies are in the region. And if you don't know anybody in Puerto Rico, now you know me. But you really have to form alliances and keep them and nurture them and build that information. And that's going to be what's going to help you be a smart and effective and intentional funder during disasters.
Thanks for that, Verónica, because, as I said before, it's similar in many places, right? I would say keep it simple. Silly, you know how to say kiss, keep it simple, stupid, but I would not say that. Don't tell my mother I said stupid publicly. Keep it simple, silly, right? Certainly knowing your allies and your partners and who can get this work done. So I have not been to Haiti in several years because of the crisis and insecurity in the country. But through this most recent earthquake that we had, we moved money within a short period of time, right? We were able to go at the time to Madre, who said, "What do you need?" They sent me the money. I didn't have to do a trilogy about the crisis, you know what I mean? And so being able to say, okay, within the sector, within the group of our partners in the Haitian Women's Collective, guys, who do you know impacted in the South? Who are the women-led organizations? Let's go through the list. Who's contacting who? And we sent them cash money. We sent them money, right? There were no strings attached because they're in a crisis, people. What strings would you possibly want to have, right? And so we had one in the South that works with women vendors. If you've ever been to Haiti and other countries, there's a lot of people on the street selling, vendors, right? They gave them $50. One of them sent us something and said, "Thanks so much. I'm able to set up my kind of little cart again. I'm good. And I'm going to go to this other part, and I'm going to go buy more stuff that I need so that I can come in, blah, blah." We had one vendor, it was interesting enough, she was like, "Okay, so all these humanitarian people are showing up. We're going to feed them. We're going to make money off of them showing up here," right? So I think it's to allow for innovation, allow for creativity, know those partners and allies. And as I said before, for organizations thinking about how to best do it, start planning and thinking about that now. Don't wait until that disaster happens. Have those kind of principles already in place. And I do also want to say that there are standards and guidelines around responding to a disaster, right? So all the international development experts here know that, right? But really using a human rights approach, and certainly the issue around gender. Using that gender lens is so important. We're talking about women. I never leave girls out of it, right? In Haiti now, more women are dealing with issues of sexual assault and abuse, as are girls. So just remembering that it's women and girls, and moving money quickly is really important, and with intention, right? So fund with positive intention to be able to get to these communities.
Great.
Thank you.
So in our last couple of seconds, I want to take a minute to appreciate Puerto Rican and Haitian culture. Both Puerto Rican Spanish and Haitian Creole are like full of these beautiful proverbs. Verónica and Carine, do you have a favorite proverb from your community that you kind of live by? I know you do.
This is not so much of a proverb, but something that we say a lot. My Puerto Rican sisters here will know. And there is even a song from Bad Bunny about this. We say a lot, estamos bien. And this comes tied to the part of resiliency. We are okay. And when I went to Puerto Rico and I went to see this woman who I was supposed to connect with her son, she was coming from the rooftop and she was drinking water from the rooftop. And I said, how are you? And she's like, well, I'm drinking water from the rooftop. It's hot and my mom needs her medication and we cannot, she has diabetes and whatnot. Pero estamos bien. And it's like, oh my God, no, you're not. And I think it's like important to acknowledge that when we're not okay. And it's important in our work, it's important to acknowledge when we're defeated. It's important to acknowledge that we're tired. And yeah, we can say estamos bien, but it has turned into something that people use as an excuse to say we can do whatever we want because they will always van a estar bien. And so, yeah, that's
Yeah, I have two. The first one is Uwemu pakonem. Anybody here speak Creole besides you, Pascal? Okay, sis. Uwemu pakonem. Uwemu pakonem is you see me, but you don't know me. Right? You don't know who I am. You don't know how I'm showing up. You don't know how I'm doing or feeling. You don't know my story. So, right? Uwemu pakonem. And the other one I think is apropos to the group here is me ampil shay palu, which is many hands share the load. Right? Many hands can work together to share the challenges, the disasters, the crisis, and so together, better for us to be together than alone.
All right. Thank you. Let's give it up for Puerto Rico Women's Foundation, Haitian Women's Collective, our
Thank you,
newest
everybody.
women's
Nice to
fund.
see you.